My name is Katie and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be going over the best books that I read in 2020. So these are the books that I gave 4 or 5 stars, absolutely loved, cannot wait to reread. There's, I think 8 or 9, maybe 10 books that I'll be talking about, but without further ado, let's get started. The first book that I'm going to be talking about is Majesty by Katharine McGee. I absolutely love this book. This is, for those of you who don't know, this is the sequel to American Royals. I've talked about it numerous times on this channel. Absolutely loved this book. I was very hesitant to go into it because I did give the first book 3.5 stars. However, after reading this in one day, I gave it 5 stars. Absolutely 10 out of 10. Recommend anyone who read American Royals to definitely pick up the sequel. It is a lot better, and I definitely prefer it to the first one. So obviously, has to be the first one to go on my best of 2020. And again, I don't know if I said this. This is in no particular order. This is just a list of books. Just a random list. The next book that I put on my best of 2020 list is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Again, this is another book that I read in one day, and I don't typically do that anymore. When I was in high school, I was able to read like a 400, 500 page book in one sitting. Lately, I have not been able to do that. I get very distracted. It doesn't usually end well. But though I did not finish this in one sitting, I did finish this in one day. I picked it up for, I think, the Owls of 2020. I do not remember. I don't know why I read this, or if it was for someone's TBR. I don't actually remember. But I do love this cover. I think this is the UK cover. I think I got it off of Book Depository. But again, I love the 70s. I wish I could be a part of the 70s. Like, if I can go back into a time period, top 5 would be the 70s, and this book takes place in like the late 60s, early 70s, I believe. At least definitely in the 70s. Absolutely loved it. Definitely recommend. This book is told in interview style, so there's no like descriptive scenes of any kind. It's just Billy Doon, lead singer of the Six, and then it goes on to what he says, and then Graham Doon, lead guitar, the Six, and it goes on to what he says. I don't know if you'll be able to see, but I love that style. I hate long descriptive scenes. I usually skip over them in books because I don't really like them. I find them a waste of time. So this is definitely a type of book that was perfect for me. So obviously it had to be on best of 2020. The next book I don't actually have with me. I'm loaning it to a friend, but I'll put a picture up here, and that is Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. Again, another book that I read in one day. Absolutely loved it. Nothing else much to say. Highly recommend. It was one of, I think I just picked it up on a whim. I was like, I got it off of Book Outlet, I believe. Book Outlet. And I like Christina Lauren's writing because I have a lot of her books already, and I just needed something light and fluffy, just something easy to read, because I wanted to read something, but I didn't know what. I didn't want a fantasy, so I go, you know what, let me pick this up, we'll try it out. Best decision I've ever made. Absolutely love the book. 10 out of 10, would totally recommend. It goes back and forth in time, so when Macy and Elliot were younger to present day, how they became best friends, and how they haven't talked in years, and how they stopped being friends. Absolutely loved it. I loaned it to a friend for her to read. She absolutely loved it. She also read it in a day. I believe she actually read it in 5 hours. So she read it in one sitting. Gave it to her mom. Her mom absolutely loved it. So if 3 people can read it all in one day, you know it's good. So that has to obviously be, I think it might be my favorite Christina Lauren book. I would have to say it is my favorite Christina Lauren book. So definitely recommend that. So I had to put it on my best of 2020. The next book that I have on my best of 2020 is All the Stars and Teeth by Adeline Grace. I got this in an Owl crate. One of my first ones. I think it was like the January one, and I subscribed to the September. Like, I first did September of 19. I believe this is January of 20, so, but don't quote me on it. Never heard of it before, Owl crate, which is why I love Owl crate. Gives me reads that I've never heard of. I believe I picked it up for the Owls. Yes, so I read this for the Owls of 2020 when the Owls were a thing. I read this for a Defense Against the Dark Arts for a book set at sea. Went into it as my second Owl Crate book. So the first book that I read from Owl Crate, I ended up DNFing, so I was very hesitant to go into it because I just assumed maybe all the Owl Crates are going to be bad. 5 stars off the bat. My god, I'm so excited for the sequel. I cannot wait. I believe it comes out in January of 2021, so definitely gonna be getting that as soon as it comes out and reading it. I do plan on rereading this though, because as much as I loved it, I only remember bits and pieces of it. It's a very, I don't want to say dense, it's a very light read, but the magic in here is very intricate. But either way, absolutely loved it. I gave this 5 stars. I loved Amora. I love Bastian. I love the magic that the author created, and I absolutely loved the world. I loved the map. I loved it. So I definitely highly recommend this book to anyone, and I believe the Owl Crate version is very pretty. That's what it looks like. So again, I had to put it on my best of 2020 list. So the next book that I'm going to be putting on my best of 2020 list is One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. This is the sequel to the first book. Oh, it's not One of Us is Lying, it's One of Us is Next. Oh, stupid. This is the sequel to One of Us is Lying. It takes place a couple months after the ending of One of Us is Lying. However, it has a whole new set of characters. However, the main characters from the first book do appear in the second book. I thought that the second book was so much better than the first book, though I did love the first book. I absolutely loved the second one so much more. My cousin originally read the first book, loved it, had me read it, and I did like it. I believe I gave it 4 stars. I might have given it 5. However, when she got the second book, I actually took it from her and read it before her, and I absolutely loved it. The last chapter of the book is what put it from a 4.5 to a 5-star read. I think my only complaint was you can make an educated guess as to who the culprit is halfway through the book. However, even though I did guess it right, I still enjoyed it very much. So I am very happy that my cousin convinced me to read the books and to give it a shot, because again, totally recommend I think it's a YA mystery or a YA thriller. I think it's a YA mystery. I'm not really big into YA mysteries just because I find them very predictable and annoying characters, because they're usually in high school and they're acting younger than they're supposed to or acting much older than they're supposed to. They're not really acting like they're teenagers. However, I did very enjoy this book and definitely recommend, and that is why it is on my best of 2020. The next book on my best of 2020 is Carrie Ball by Stephanie Garber. Again, I read this book in one day. Absolutely loved it. This may be my favorite trilogy. I'm still on the fence. I still think I like A Court of Thorns and Roses better, but this is still, like, this trilogy is a very close second place. Like, it blew me out of the water. I had the first book for a while. I think I got it from Book Outlet, because there's the mark, so not Target, because everyone was talking about it and never read it. Then I got the third book finale from Book Outlet. Never read this one yet. And then I recently acquired Legendary, and I forgot where I got it from. I think Target or something. I do not recall. It's in one of my earlier book hauls. And I was like, you know what? We gotta read it somehow. We just gotta do it. And then it ended up coming up on my Bookopoly to read as one of my chance cards. So I go, well, gotta do it now. I have all 3 books. I might as well just read it. Best decision I've ever made. My God, I love Scarlet. I love Julian. I loved this book. I was trying to play along in the game itself, trying to guess the different clues. I was shocked at the ending. I was screaming at the ending. I was screaming at this book. I was reading it in our living room, and I would read a couple chapters and be like, Mom, this is what's happening. Mom, you'll never guess what's happening. Mom, this is what the clue was. So every couple of chapters I would update her on everything that was happening in this book. I finished it in one day. Absolutely loved it. I do think that the first book is much better than the second and third, so I do prefer the first book. I just got the collector's edition of Carrie Ball, and I'm very excited to do a reread and read in that edition, and I'm excited for the next book that she is writing. I won't say anything just because it's a little bit of a spoiler, but I'm very excited, and that is why this book is on my best of 2020. The next book on my best of 2020, gonna have no shock to anyone, Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. I originally started this when the book first came out. My goal was to finish it that weekend, or at least that week, because it came out on a Tuesday. I was like, okay, we're gonna read it that weekend. Got halfway through, and then I got it to about I had like 150 pages left, and I stopped because I did not want it to end. And this year I made it my goal to finish the book, just to finish the 150 pages, and I finished the 150 in one sitting. And this is my favorite series of all time. I think this concluded in the best way that a book could ever conclude. It's a very sad book. It's a very heavy, dense, it's dense. I mean, it's 1,000 pages, but I still think about this book. I'm very excited to reread the series again and just to be back in this world with Selena and everyone. Highly recommend this book for anyone who is just starting out with fantasy. I would say the first couple of books is definitely YA fantasy. However, as the series goes on, I do think it turns more adult. Not just because of what the characters do, but just like the whole magic system, the whole world, and obviously certain scenes. But I do think it's a good starter for people who might want to get into like more high dense fantasy, or if they want like a very long series to read. I definitely recommend. But had to put Babe, I had to put her on Best of 2020. Favorite series of all time. This is my #1 spot. Absolutely love the series and will never stop recommending it. The next book that I am putting on my Best of 2020 list is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. I think everyone should read this book. I cannot recommend it more to anyone. This is one of the first basically autobiographies or nonfiction books that I've read, and I cannot wait to read more nonfiction because of her. Make sure you're in a good state of mind when you do read it, because it does talk about sexual assault and stuff like that. So it is a very heavy read. It did take me a while to read it just because it is very heavy, and it did make me cry. I'm not gonna lie, it made me cry. So I gave it 5 stars. What got me more into nonfiction? That I do want to start reading more nonfiction. Again, had to put on my Best of 2020. The final book that I'm going to talk about for my Best of 2020 is Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahurin. Oh, I never noticed that there's an actual dove on it. I wish they made that pop more. I don't know if anyone's ever noticed, but there's an actual dove on the cover. How am I just noticing this now? I've read this book twice, and I'm just noticing this now. I think they should have made it pop more. I read this, absolutely loved it. It came out in 2019, but I didn't read it until this year for, I believe, the Owls. Yes, I read this for the Owls 2020 for History of Magic, which is a book that has witches or wizards in it, and obviously this book has witches because it's when a witch and a witch hunter are forced into an arranged marriage. So obviously there's witches in it. I gave this book 4 stars just because the overall plot was great. Absolutely loved it. Thought it was very original. I loved all the characters. It's just I felt like the ending was a bit rushed. I feel like it could have slowed down a little bit. I think it felt to me like she was trying to keep it at a certain page limit instead of using the I don't know. To me, it just felt a bit rushed. So if it was slowed down a bit, definitely would have been 5 stars, but I think that was my only complaint about it. Definitely recommend. I think it was supposed to be a duology, but now it's going to be a trilogy. I have the second book, Blood and Honey, but I haven't read it yet. I was planning on reading it after I reread this book to jump right into it, but then I never ended up reading it. That's my own fault. But yeah, highly recommend this book. It's a nice book to introduce yourself to a magical world and to witches. This is one of my first witch books, so I definitely recommend. So yeah, 4 stars, Best 2020. So those were all of the books that I basically either gave 4 or 5 stars. I thought they were the best books that I've read in 2020. I think it's a good selection. It's very broad, I think, of different kinds of books. So there's fiction, there's fantasy, there's contemporary, there's romance, there's nonfiction. So I think it's like a chunk of books, I would say. I definitely recommend all of these books that I talked about in this video to anyone, whether you're just starting to read, you've been reading for years, you're looking for a change of genre, whatever. Granted, again, these are all my opinions. If you hated it, tell me why. I would love to know. I'll tell you why I loved it. I thank you for watching, and I hope you subscribe down below, give it a like, leave a comment, say hi, but I will see you guys again soon. Bye!